Hi, and welcome to the Badass Breastfeeding Podcast, co-hosted by Abby Searing, the Badass Breastfeeder, and Dianne Cassidy, IBCLC.
Hey, welcome to the Badass Breastfeeding Podcast. This is Dianne, your lactation consultant.
This is Abby, the Badass Breastfeeder.
And we have got quite the podcast for you today.
We do.
We do.
We're going to talk about sex.
Yeah. Who doesn't want to talk about sex?
Or
right?
the desire to have sex, or lack thereof.
Yeah, all those things fall under this category, I think.
Absolutely. So, but we're going to do a review of the week.
Yes. And our review of the week comes from Flashwo. And Flashwo says, love, love, love. A great way to help normalize breastfeeding. Been following the BAB, which is you. You're the BAB. Account on Instagram for a while and was very happy to find this podcast. A must-listen for new moms, new to breastfeeding moms, and those who want to support breastfeeding moms, which should be everyone. You are very right. It should be. Thank you for this. My only regret is that I would have found it sooner in my nursing journey, but I won't let my new mom friends miss out. Wow. Thank you, Flashwo.
Thank you, Flashwo.
Spread the love.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
Yeah. So we are going to talk about libido today, and if you're not sure what that is, cause I think it took me a long time to figure out what a libido was, because it was just one of those things that you would like hear in a song or something, and I'd be like, what's a libido? Like, what is whatever? Or you hear it like on, I don't know, Love Connection or something, I don't know, and you're like, what's that?
In one of their rhymes, in like one of Chuck Woolery's rhymes. I met Chuck Woolery once.
Did you really?
Yes, I know I'm dating myself right now, but I don't know if nobody listening to this even knows who he is, do they? So there's a show from like the 80s called Love Connection, and Chuck Woolery was the host, and like, I don't know, well, it was 20 years ago now.
It was like online dating before online dating.
Yeah, it was like, right.
Yeah.
Who would like set up dates on TV, and then like a person would be the guest, and then there would be three people, and the person would go out with all three people, and then they would pick who they wanted to go on another date with at the end of the show.
Yeah.
And he was awesome. He'd say things like, we'll be back in 2 and 2. And he was all tan, and he was like, he was so friendly. Anyway, so I was working at a bookstore 20 years ago, and he came in, and me and my friend who worked at this bookstore together, we're like 20, and we're both sitting on the same chair. And you know how you do when you're 20 with your friends? He came up to the desk, and we're like, look up, and we're like, oh my God, it's friggin' Chuck Woolery. And he's like, do you have any, he like smiled real big, and he was like orange. He was like so fake tan, but he was so friendly.
He had these huge white
smiley
teeth. Like
he had
these
big white teeth, and he was
teeth.
really tall, and he was really friendly, and he was like, do you have any, like, I can't remember what kind of book he was looking for, but we're like, yeah, it's over there. Like, didn't even get up to be like, here, let me show you. And we're just like, yeah, they're over there. And he was like, thank you. And we were like, oh my God, I'm so cool. Anyway,
there
were a lot of famous people. It was like in New York City, so there were a lot of famous people that went in there. But that applies right now.
Yeah. It does.
Libido. You found out libido from Love Connection. That's funny.
Love Connection or Love Boat or something stupid like that. Who knows?
Another
very cheesy old show. But I remember, like, it's just, you know, it's your sex drive.
Sex drive.
Really.
I guess we should call it that. Breastfeeding and Sex Drive. Maybe that's better.
But we do have an episode, like we did way early, about sex after baby. So that is kind of the same thing, but not really the same thing.
Well, that was like a lot about like the logistics, I think, kind of like, you know, what's it going to be when when you're having sex again, and
are you going to be scared? Is it going to hurt?
Yeah, right. And I mean, we could talk about that too, but I feel like one of the things that happens, you know, kind of when you're past, you're healed, okay, you're breastfeeding, now you're a breastfeeding mom, you know, or a breastfeeder, and you know, now it's like your hormones are still, like, going nuts. Yeah. And, you know, then maybe at some point you're going to wean, and then your hormones are going to go crazy again. And, you know, all of that affects sex drive. And I was just talking to somebody, I don't know what, a couple days ago. She was messaging me, and she was, like, asking me some questions. And I was like, what's going on? And she was like, I just feel, she had just had her third, I think it was her third baby. And she said, I am so stressed out. I just, like, it took me, like, almost a year to figure out that I had postpartum depression and anxiety. Aww. And, she was like, she's like, stressed out and yelling a lot and feeling just overwhelmed and excessively tired. And, she's just thinking like, okay, well, this is, how it's, this is just how it is. And then finally, she's like, okay, I have to actually deal with this. And she was like, and I just have like, my kids go to sleep at night and I just fall asleep and I have like no sex drive. And, I feel like my husband feels guilt, or I feel guilty because of, I'm not like having sex with my husband, and the story that we all have, the whole thing. And I was just like, wow, yeah, that's it. I think that's what we're all going through, right?
Right.
I don't know. I mean, and I hear these stories like, especially like sex right after baby, kind of like dealing with that whole like, doing it for the first time, like you're saying, like all the questions you have in your head about it. And I saw a comment one time, and I mean, it's not a lot of times that you hear this stuff, but this woman was like, oh, I was so horny after I had my baby, we didn't even make it out of the hospital without having sex again. And I was like, I don't do that.
That's a whole different breed of person, I feel
like.
I
know, and I'm like, don't, because that, I feel like women especially are so hypersexualized that, like, we almost feel like if we're not feeling sexual, then our value is kind of like not, because we're so valued for our sex, right?
Right.
And our sex appeal and our, whatever. And when you're not feeling that, it almost feels like you're not a full woman. That part of you is like dead.
Right.
And then comes all the guilt and all of this, But really, there's like very, it's normal. It's a normal thing to go through when you're, I mean, at any point, but especially having a baby and breastfeeding, it's all hormonal.
I was just going to say that. It's hormonal, and you might, if you don't understand that, or if you weren't expecting it, or you didn't realize that it was going to happen, or, I've said a zillion times, our society says, 6 weeks, you're healed, back to normal. No, you are not. And if you kind of go through your life thinking, okay, it's been 6 weeks, I should feel normal, I should want to have sex again, I should want to go work out, I should want to do this or that. It's like you really are not healed yet. Your body is still adjusting and adapting, and those hormones are still fluctuating, and you might not realize that is why you are interested. It's, but I can tell you who really doesn't get it is your partner. Like, they really don't understand that there's still a lot of hormonal changes happening. There's still a lot going on there. And it's not about you. Like, they're not finding you to be like, ew, get away from me. I don't even, want you to ever touch me again. That's not how it is. It's like hormones on top of feeling tired, on top of feeling run down. And it's just, there's a lot.
I don't know. Sometimes I feel like if someone touches me, I'm going to punch them.
Because you had too touched out from your kids and everybody. They're like all over you all the time.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I remember
and my husband's like, do you want a hug? And I'm like, no!
Get off.
That's not what I want. I don't want that right now. I'm sorry. Like, it's not, again, you're right. It's not you.
Right.
I don't want that hug. Like, I'm going to freak out.
I know.
And then it's like, we watched, that show, Parenthood.
Oh, I remember that show.
It's like a little old. It's like kind of old now. But we circle through like and binge watch shows on Netflix, and we're going through Parenthood right now. And there's the one couple with the kid that has Asperger's, and the family, the parents are like, they're constantly like making out, and like, are all the parents on the show, because this is what we see on TV, right?
Right.
It's like all these partners are just like constantly all over each other. And look, if that's your relationship and that's how you feel, awesome. That's great. That's cool. But if it's not, then like, you're watching all this all the time, and it's like, oh my God, I don't feel like running and jumping and like wrapping my legs around my husband every day he gets home from work, like June Cleaver. Well, June Cleaver didn't do that, but
Could you imagine?
Like,
oh my God.
That would have been a better show. But and they're like, do you want to make out? I'm like, what? Stop. This is not how. And there's all these stresses. Like 1 minute they're so stressed out about like what's going on with their kids or whatever, and then the next minute they're like in the car like making out. I'm like, I don't know. This is making me feel guilty. And I hate it when people say that you're making me feel guilty, because there's no standing on that argument. But I'm just like, come on, this is what people feel. I feel like people feel inadequate sometimes because this is what we see. The expectation. Yeah, this is what you see, and this becomes like society's expectation.
But the reality is, like, I can tell you in the moms groups that I see and the moms that I talk to, the majority of the time they're like, me and the baby sleep in one room and my husband sleeps somewhere else.
Yeah. Everyone is just trying to get a wink of sleep.
Right. And that's how it is for some people for a long time. And they're kind of embarrassed to say it. And then somebody else goes, oh, yeah, that's the same setup we have. And it's like, it's a very common theme that it's just the way it is.
I know. It's so true.
It's just, that's the reality.
Just because, right, and that's what, like you were saying, like, just because your job decided that you need to come back at 6 weeks does not at all mean that is any kind of marker for anything. 6 weeks is not a marker for anything at all. That is totally made up by your job. There's no one that out there in the medical field or anybody, with actual medical information about, lactation and birth and whatever, who would say like, oh yeah, absolutely, 6 weeks, you're healed. Or any kind of anything. Nothing happens at 6 weeks.
No.
You're healing.
Right. It took you a long time to get to where you are. 9 months of gestating.
Yes.
It's not going to
take you way longer than that to get back to any kind of normalcy.
Yeah. I mean, even when you feel like physically, you might physically feel fine, you are still going to be like, your hormones are still going to be going crazy. You still might have zero interest. You might be like, oh, shouldn't I be interested in having sex again? No, probably not. And then sometimes I'll have moms that will like ask me, because you can, of course, get pregnant when you're breastfeeding. You can. And I will ask moms that if I've got a mom that's, the baby's a little older and she feels like her supply is like dropping all of a sudden, like, well, could you be pregnant? And I just remember this one mom looked at me and she's like, there is no possible way. Like, I know, fair enough. Like, it's,
because that's how we are around here. I'm like, oh, my boobs are so sore. And I'm like, oh, that's like sign of pregnancy. Well, it would have to be like a miracle, Mary's miracle baby. That's not it. That's impossible.
That's how a lot of people feel. And then, if you do run into one of those people that is just like, oh, that didn't affect me at all, I still really had, such a high sex drive. People are different. Don't feel like that's the way you need to be.
It's so individual. Yeah, and those people, honestly, are the minority. The people that have a very high sex drive through all of it, they exist, but that's not the majority of people. And you're even going to have times where like, okay, it seems like, because again, you don't have your period yet. And then, that's going to come, that's going to affect your hormonal thing. And then sometimes you're going to feel like, oh, hey, maybe it's coming back a little bit. I feel like I'm in the mood. And then next month or whatever, it could totally drop away again for a long time. And then, then it could, there's no formula.
Right.
For what's going to happen.
Okay, so let's talk about this for a second. Let's break it down. If you are like, okay, yeah, I'm totally fine. I want to have sex. We're having a date night, whatever. We're on Parenthood. Who knows? Whatever's going on. And what should you expect, right? Like, if you're breastfeeding, we know that there's hormonal changes happening, which can cause dryness, vaginal dryness. We've talked about that before on the show. which can obviously impact your sex life. Your milk could let down.
Oh, yeah.
That's another thing that could happen. And
I had a friend who called it milky sex. She was like, we have milky sex. Because she would just let down in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And it would just be all over the place.
I mean,
whatever, what are you going to do? Get a towel.
Yeah, it's hormonal. It happens. But if you aren't sure about it, then it'll be a big surprise.
Oh, I know. If you and your partner are not expecting it, it could be very freaky. Yeah.
Sometimes, you might feel ready to go with it, and you're like, you can't relax and kind of get into it because you're waiting for the baby's going to cry at any minute.
Uh-huh.
Like, that's another thing. You've constantly always got that. And then as you get older, they're like, the kid's going to wander into my room at any minute. Like, you're constantly, like, waiting for this kid to show up.
Or you co-sleep, and you have to find another place.
Right.
Which is what it goes in our house.
Right.
And so we have a guest bedroom, and, we have, the floor and couches and stuff. But, get creative. You were in college once. You can do it.
Yeah. Absolutely. I always say that one of my friends has a, I know several people that have, like, family beds and stuff like that and co-sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I don't know where you are having sex in your house. And she's like, yeah, careful where you sit. And I'm like, thanks.
Yeah.
But it's, you have to be a little bit more creative, but you do have to expect that your body's not going to be exactly the same. Things are going to happen, and, if you're not expecting your milk to let down, if you might have your baby monitor right there, and that's kind of where your focus is going, and you're having a hard time kind of clearing your head, and, it might take a little practice for you to feel okay.
And can we talk about touching our boobs? Because I'm just talking about everything. I don't care.
Who cares?
Before I had kids, my boobs were a major erogenous zone for me. Mm-hmm. And now I'm like, get your hands off my boobs. They've completely, I can't even handle it.
That's so funny.
I can't. I'm like, do not touch my boobs. I mean, I'm sure it'll go back, it'll shift, we're shifting. But I can't stand right now, like, my boobs being touched sexually. It's just completely, they've been so totally, my relationship completely changed with them. Mm-hmm. They used to be like the things I put in fancy bras and pushed up. Yeah. And now they fed my kids for a while. It's just like they were not a sexual thing at all for many years. And so, yeah. I remember posting about this on Facebook one time. And I was like, so, what about, like, boobs? Boobs during sex. And this woman's comment, she was like, yeah, they're not fun bigs anymore.
Oh, my God.
I thought that was so funny.
Did you ever watch Everybody Loves Raymond?
Yes.
So since we're talking about all these old sitcoms.
Yeah.
I remember there was one episode where, I don't know, it was like a whole sex thing, because there was always that he wanted the sex and she never did.
Yeah, right. Uh-huh.
But there was one time where she was just like...
That's always the dynamic on TV.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
Always.
I know.
It's
Why
always
can't it be
the
other way
guys,
around?
like, the guy's like, I can't, he's like uncontrollably, like, stalking and heavy breathing after his wife or whatever, and she's like, go away.
No, it's crazy. But I remember she's sitting there, and she was talking about, like, having the kids and all of this stuff, and she goes, well, these are working boobs, because she's, like, talking about the breastfeeding. Like, breastfeeding, these are working boobs, Ray. They don't work like that anymore.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, it does. It changes things. It could change the way you feel about things. Mm-hmm. And, it's just like you gotta...
And that's and I was saying this too, you have, before you have kids, you're trying so hard not to get pregnant, right? Sex is just fun. It's recreational activity. That's all. Mm-hmm. And then when you start to have kids, you kind of change, it changes. It's meaning. It changes, it just changes to a different thing, a different purpose, a different thing between you and your partner. And then it has to shift back, because if you're not having kids or you're not trying to have, then you're trying to find your way back to, like, sex for fun, which a lot of times it doesn't sound fun. I'm like, that's not what sounds fun for me right now. You know what sounds fun for me? Sleep.
Yeah. Sounds
or
like
sitting on this couch and nobody touching me. That's
or
what sounds
talking
fun
to me. How about nobody talk to me?
Or pretend I'm not here. That'll be my fun.
Yeah. It almost feels like a chore, you know? Like
yes, right. I mean, it's a lot of work to kind of, you got to get your mind into it. And I mean, especially for the breastfeeder who is working all the time, you know, with just taking care of the baby and feeding the baby and doing all of this, like, that is a huge shift in your mind to just get into that.
Right.
You know, I just think it's different.
Oh, it absolutely is. It absolutely is. And I mean, I appreciate those people who can, like, separate it, you know, and, like...
I know, I wish I could.
Sex to have kids and sex to have fun, but I don't, yeah. It was not my life, for sure, with my kid's father. It really wasn't.
Oh, recreational sex? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I mean, that's the other thing is, like, sex is so different from couple to couple, too. Mm-hmm. You know, so, I mean, you're going to have, like, one couple maybe have had, you know, sex every day, and then other people don't, and it's so different, and then it's going to be completely different again when you have a baby, and then the hormones and everything, and, you know.
Right.
It's so different. And I don't know. I mean, here I mean, I've weaned. I mean, you're not with your kid's father anymore, so that's nothing to compare to. But my kids have weaned, and I haven't weaned that long. I mean, what it's been a few months now.
Yeah.
And honestly, I feel like my sex drive at this moment is lower than it's ever been. I was going through probably the last, like, year or two. I don't know if it's been 2 years. Maybe it's been that long. I don't know. But I started to have. It was when Exley was, like, you know, leaving, you know, babyhood into toddlerhood.
Yeah.
I started having really, really extreme symptoms, like PMS symptoms.
Ugh.
Super emotional feelings. My breasts hurt more. You know, that first trimester feeling?
Oh, God, that's awful.
More than that. Like, I've never, ever felt this level of pain. And I'm like, oh, my God, this is like a crazy hormonal thing that's going on.
Yeah.
And then, along with all of this pain, my sex drive is, like, tanked.
Ugh.
And I did find a gas station to fill up again. I don't know where. Where is it?
I know, right? It's a lot of it, like, you don't expect your hormones to change like they do. And your
change so, yeah.
Oh, my God. Like, I can even remember, like, being completely oblivious to my period. Before I had children.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I would get it or whatever, and it would be there. I couldn't tell, you know. After I had kids, it was worse. It got worse and worse, progressively worse every month, every year. It was worse. I could feel myself ovulating, whereas before I could never, like, there was no, you know, I had no indication of anything. I would get my period and be like, oh, yeah, I guess it's that time, whatever, move along. My symptoms got worse every year, every month. It was so bad after I had my kids. And, like,
I feel the same way. And I wonder if it's just because you're living in a completely different body now.
Yeah.
Like, it's the same body, but it's gone through so much. I mean, even just having, like, just the way you think about it. You know, you think about, I never really, like, thought about my boobs before. I mean, if somebody had asked me, like, what are boobs for? Like, what are you born with boobs for? Probably I could have come up with the answer of, like, to feed a child. But I don't know. Because that was not at all what my boobs were for.
Well, yeah. No.
Then. And, you know, now it's like your relationship with your body is just so different. And you really get to know, like, you know, having a baby inside of your body makes you aware of things down there that you never knew were really down there or had a sensation about.
Right. Like,
and now you're just, like, so in touch with it.
Pelvic floor. Who knew that was a thing?
Yeah.
Who knew that you had a floor on your pelvis? Like, who knew that was a
I
thing?
didn't know I had flooring.
Right. It's like, And then when it's gone, you certainly do know it, though, don't you?
Yeah,
like,
but I feel the same way. I can wake up and kind of get going through my day and start to feel something, and I'll be like, I bet you it is exactly to the day 2 weeks until my next period. Mm-hmm. And I can walk to the calendar and be exactly right. Yeah. I know exactly what every single cycle feels like inside and out of my body, emotionally and physically.
It's ridiculous.
It's annoying.
And it's just like, it was unbelievable to me how much more in tune I got once after my kids were born. Like, that's really when it happened. It was them.
Totally.
You know? It was
totally. That's what changes everything. Is just, yeah.
Yeah. So it's normal.
Your body being used for that.
I hope we're not like scaring anybody. People are probably sitting out there listening. Going, what the hell? Like,
hopefully people are like, oh my God, thank God it's not just me.
I know. And it's really kind of amazing. Like, at the same time, your body is an amazing thing. And, you know, things will evolve because everything's a season.
Absolutely.
So once you kind of get through, you know, your season, and that's why people, obviously, if you had, you know, you would not have more children, but people have, you know, families and all this stuff. So sex does happen again. But your body, as much as my body changed, at the same time, like if somebody handed me $1 million and said, oh, here, you can go get, you know, a tummy tuck, you can go get this done, you can go get this fixed or this changed. Like, I went through a lot to get to where I am. You know, like I grew children and I, you know, made these babies and I nourished these babies. And if I just went ahead and changed my body back, I don't know, like I'm proud of I'm proud of all that, you know?
Right, yeah. Like, that's what your body, yeah, that's what it was for.
Yeah, and I think all women should be proud of that because we really, there's a lot we put into it. And then for some reason we look at it and go, oh, but it doesn't want to have sex anymore.
Yeah,
well,
I know. And there's so much guilt and shame in that. In that feeling, in our culture, there's so much negativity in that.
And there's nothing that should be, you know, and plus you should feel like, even if you don't want to have sex again, or right now, during this time frame that you're in your life, during this season, there's nothing wrong with your body. You know, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just where you are right now. Things change.
Yeah, and if you are like my friend who is suffering from postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety and any of those kinds of things, it's going to be, you know, that's going to play a part in that journey, you know, and going down that road too. You know, all of that stuff has to be taken care of.
Absolutely. You got to be healthy. You know, you got to be healthy and take care of yourself for sure.
Yeah.
Anything
else? But
else?
It'll, you know, like you said, it's a season. It'll change.
It is. Yeah, and it'll change and it'll get better. And, you know, people have more kids. And it always killed me, like, the people that have kids right up on top of each other, like less than a year apart.
Oh, I know.
Or just a little over a year apart. You're like, wow, how'd you do that? Like, that's ambition right there.
I know. I feel like I remember that, though, from having Jack into Exley. Like, I think it was business.
Yeah.
You know, it was business. You know, we want another kid. We got to do it now. Let's just go. I'm ovulating. All right, let's go. You know, like I'm saying that's the whole thing of like changing from recreational sex to like this is business.
Yeah.
You know, we're trying to get in here at a certain amount of time and all right, let's go, you know.
Yep. Got to have another one. Got to make it work right now. Oh my God. So funny.
Well, we want to hear from you guys. We would like to hear about your experiences, which you can share in the iTunes review section, and maybe we'll pick you for the review of the week. And also, please head over to badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com and join in the conversation in the comments section there. And you can find sponsor links and promo codes and all of our other episodes.
Yeah, definitely. Go if you have not listened to the other episodes, go find them.
Yeah, there's like almost 60 now.
Oh my gosh, we're on a roll. And we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.